Hello everyone. Let's discuss one essay written by Victor Shklovsky. Victor Shklovsky's essay, Art as Technique. Art as Technique, 1917. Victor Shklovsky, 1893-1984. The essay falls under the category of Russian formalism. The main focus of the essay is the role of artistic techniques in a defamiliarizing ordinary perception. Victor Shklovsky's essay, Art as Technique, the essay is also known as Art as Device, is a foundational work of Russian formalism, an early 20th century literary movement that focused on the structure and a form of literature rather than its content or social function. The essay argues that the purpose of art is to make the familiar strange, that is called austrainy, thereby renewing human perception and preventing automatization in how we see the world. Shklovsky first coined the term defamiliarization in this essay in 1917. Before going to the points about the essay, we should know what is Russian formalism. Russian formalism was a 20th century literary movement that focused on analyzing literature through its structure, form, and techniques rather than its social or historical context. It emphasized how literary devices such as imagery, rhyme, and narrative techniques shape meaning and affected the reader's experience. Key thinkers like Victor Shklovsky, Roman Jakobson, and Boris Eichenbaum introduced the concepts like defamiliarization, making the familiar seem strange, to highlight how literature changes perception. Unlike a traditional criticism, which often studied literature's moral or political messages, Russian formalists believed that the artistic structure itself was the most important aspect. Though the movement declined by the 1930s, its ideas influenced the later literary theories like structuralism and narratology, shaping modern literary analysis. Main themes in the essay include defamiliarization, that is austrainy, then purpose of art, then difference between artistic and a practical language, the process of perception in art. First one, defamiliarization, that is austrainy. Art forces us to see objects and experiences in a new way by making them unfamiliar. Ordinary life leads to automatized perception where people stop noticing things deeply. Literature, especially poetic language, slows down perception, allowing for a fresh and intense experience of reality. The purpose of art. Art is not meant to just express emotions or represent reality, but to change how we perceive the world. By altering the form and presentation of objects, art prevents routine perception and forces deeper engagement. Difference between artistic and practical language. Everyday language is efficient and automatic, while artistic language is deliberate and complex. Poetry and literature use unusual structures, extended descriptions, and unfamiliar perspectives to slow down understanding. The process of perception in art. Shklovsky argues that over time, people stop noticing the uniqueness of things around them. Art restores this awareness by making objects strange again ensuring active perception rather than passive recognition. Division and key arguments in the essay. First one, automatization of perception. Second one, the role of art in reviving perception. First one, automatization of perception. Humans gradually stop noticing familiar things because they become routine. Everyday experiences are processed automatically, reducing deep engagement with reality. This leads to a dull and a habitual interaction with the world, making life less vivid. The second one, the role of art in reviving perception. Art functions to break the automatization of perception by presenting reality in unexpected ways. Artists use varied techniques such as detailed descriptions, unusual perspectives, and distorted structures to slow down recognition. This forces the audience to re-examine reality and experience it anew. Examples from literature. Leo Tolstoy's short story called Stoma, which means strider. Shklovsky cited Tolstoy's technique of describing common things like a horse race as if seen for the first time. Tolstoy avoids conventional names for objects, making them feel fresh and unfamiliar. He uses this story as an example of defamiliarization, that is, ostraneni, which is a technique that makes the familiar appear strange. Tolstoy tells the story from the perspective of a horse, making human customs such as property ownership seem unnatural and arbitrary. This narrative technique forces readers to see everyday concepts in a new light, which is central to Shklovsky's argument about how art renews perception. Poetry versus prose. Poetic language extends the time of perception by using metaphors, complex syntax, and rhythmic structures. Unlike everyday speech, poetry slows down understanding, forcing deeper attention to words and meanings. Art as a device. Art does not exist to convey message or reflect society. Instead, it exists to change how we see things. The form of a work is more important than its content or moral purpose. Writers and artists employ different devices to keep perception active, ensuring that audiences engage fully with the work. Introduce the concept defamiliarization. One of the most influential ideas in modern literary theory is defamiliarization. The concept has been applied in literature, film, theatre, and visual arts to describe how art alters perception. Foundation of Russian formalism. Shifted focus from content to form. Content means what a story is about, to form and its technique, that is how the story is told. Influenced later movements like structuralism and post-structuralism. Filmmakers like Sergei Eisenstein applied defamiliarization technique in cinema. Modernist and postmodernist writers like James Joyce, Samuel Beckett, and Vladimir Nabokov used similar strategies in fiction. Shklovsky's ideas were shaped by Russian futurism, which rejected traditional literary forms. His essay laid the foundation for Russian formalism, emphasizing form over content in artistic analysis. In this way, Shklovsky argues that everyday perception becomes mechanical, making people indifferent to the surroundings. Art disrupts this indifference by forcing individuals to experience the world with a fresh awareness. Shklovsky suggests that art continually reinvents itself by introducing new techniques. As soon as a style becomes familiar, artists create new forms of defamiliarization. Unlike traditional critics, he dismisses the idea that art must teach moral lessons or reflect social realities. Instead, he insists that art's primary function is to transform perception rather than educate or persuade. His concept of defamiliarization influenced their structuralism, postmodernism, and reader response theory. Writers like Bertolt Brecht used similar techniques in theatre, for example, Wolfram Mondesque effect, to prevent passive engagement. The idea applies to cinema, painting, music, and architecture, where artists disrupt norms to create fresh experiences. Directors like Stanley Kubrick and Andrei Tarkovsky use visual defamiliarization in their films. Shklovsky highlights how unusual sentence structures, fragmented storytelling, and shifts in perspective can slow down comprehension and deepen engagement. This technique is evident in modernist literature such as James Joyce's Ulysses and Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis. While realist literature seeks to portray life as it is, Shklovsky argues that art must distort reality to make it truly visible. He contrasts Tolstoy's detailed and strange descriptions with a conventional storytelling that assumes familiarity. He warns that as life becomes increasingly mechanical, art must counteract this trend by reviving perception. This perspective makes his essay relevant even today in an era of digital automation and passive consumption of media. Poets deliberately use unexpected metaphors, complex rhythms, and ambiguous meanings to slow down reading. He sees poetry as the purest form of defamiliarization, making language strange and engaging.